The Whispering Walls. Tom has always enjoyed his solitude. After moving to a small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Amsterdam, he relished the peace and quiet the place offered. The building was old, with creaky wooden floors and thick walls that seemed to hold centuries of secrets. It was perfect for his quiet lifestyle. On the first night, as Tom settled into bed, he heard a faint knocking sound coming from the wall behind his headboard. It was rhythmic and steady, almost like someone tapping lightly with their fingers. He dismissed it as the old building settling and tried to sleep. But the knocking persisted, growing louder and more insistent as the night wore on. Tom tossed and turned, the sound worming its way into his dreams. The following morning, Tom felt groggy, unrested. He chalked it up to the first night jitters in a new place. As he went about his day, the apartment seemed unusually quiet. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, but every time he turned around, there was nothing there. That night, the knocking returned. This time, it was accompanied by a soft weeping sound. It was faint, barely audible over the knocks, but it was there. Tom sat up in bed, straining to hear. The sound seemed to come from within the walls, a woman's cry of despair. He pressed his ear against the wall, but the sound ceased immediately. Shaking his head, he lay back down, wondering if his mind was playing tricks on him. As the week progressed, the sound grew worse. The knocking became erratic, sometimes loud enough to wake him from a deep sleep. The weeping grew more pronounced, that Tom found himself on the verge of tears. During the day, he began to see things out of the corner of his eye. A shadowy figure standing in the corner of his room, vanishing the moment he turned to look. He started to doubt his sanity, feeling trapped in a nightmare with no escape. By the fifth night, Tom was on edge. He had barely slept. He didn't know what to do. He just waited for the noises to start. As the clock struck midnight, the knocking began again, more frantic than ever. The weeping was louder, filled with a bone-chilling anguish. Tom covered his ears, trying to block out the sound, but it seeped into his mind, relentless and unforgiving. Desperate for an answer, he began to tear at the wallpaper, convinced that someone was trapped inside. As he ripped away the layers, he uncovered an old faded painting of a woman with hollow eyes and a mournful expression. Her image seemed to shift and move, her eyes following him around the room. Tom stumbled back, heart pounding. On the seventh night, Tom was exhausted, his mind fraying at the edges. He collapsed into bed, hoping for some semblance of rest, but as he drifted off, a new horror awaited him. He awoke to a crushing weight on his chest, unable to move. The room was pitch black, but he could feel a presence called malevolent force. The shadowy figure stood at the foot of his bed, its form more distinct and terrifying than before. The figure moved closer, and Tom could see its face now, twisted and grotesque. It was the woman from the painting, her eyes burning with unnatural light. She climbed onto the bed, her weight pressing down on him, and he could barely breathe. Her face inches from his, she whispered, "You're mine." Tom tried to scream, but no sound came out. The pressure on his chest grew unbearable, his face dimming. In his final moments, he realized the truth. The sounds were real, and he was not alone. The apartment's walls had trapped the tormented spirit of the night hag, and she had chosen him as her latest victim. When Tom's body was found the next morning, his face was twisted in terror, his eyes wide open. The walls of his apartment were silent once more, but those who knew the building history whispered of the night hag, a specter that preyed on the lonely and the vulnerable. And as the old building settled into the quiet of another night, the faint sound of knocking could be heard once more, heralding the arrival of her next victim.